Andrew Carter gripped his coffee mug in a packed Chicago diner, his knuckles white as his wife, Emily, laughed across the room. Her fingers brushed the arm of a man in a sharp suit, a silver bracelet, new, unfamiliar, glinting on her wrist. She didn't know legal papers, crafted by Andrew over weeks, were poised to shatter her lies. His heart pounded, not with rage, but with a resolve honed by betrayal. Tonight, her deception would face justice. In the serene suburb of Evanston, Illinois, Andrew Carter, a 35-year-old paralegal, lived a life many would envy. His home, a charming two-story with a white picket fence, stood as a symbol of stability, earned through years of dedication. Inside, the walls echoed with memories of happier times, late-night talks, shared dreams, and quiet moments with Emily, his 38-year-old wife, a magnetic real estate agent whose charisma could sway any client. Their weekends often hummed with the sizzle of neighborhood barbecues or the comfort of movie nights, their conversations drifting to hopes of starting a family someday. Andrew's methodical nature complemented Emily's vibrant energy, making them a couple others admired, at least on the surface. Andrew found solace in routine. At his law firm in downtown Chicago, he navigated stacks of case files with a precision that earned him quiet respect. His days were predictable, grounded in the logic of legal documents and deadlines. Emily, by contrast, thrived in the unpredictable world of real estate, closing deals with a smile that disarmed even the toughest clients. Her passion for her work was infectious, and Andrew had always admired how she moved through social events with ease, her laughter filling rooms, her quick wit drawing people in. Their differences had once been their strength. His steadiness anchored her spontaneity, while her warmth softened his reserved demeanor. For years, they'd built a partnership that felt unshakable, a love that seemed to weather any storm. But lately, a subtle discord had crept into their home. Emily's late nights at work had become routine, her explanations vague and fleeting. "Just a client thing," she'd say, brushing off Andrew's questions with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her phone buzzed at odd hours, and she'd silence it with a glance, her fingers moving swiftly to hide the screen. At first, Andrew attributed it to the demands of her job. Real estate was a high-stakes field, and Emily's ambition had always driven her to go the extra mile. Yet, the atmosphere between them grew strained, her presence distant even when they shared the same space, her smiles more performative than genuine. Andrew tried to reconnect. He organized a surprise dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant in Evanston, hoping to rekindle the spark of their early years. Emily agreed, but her attention wandered to her phone throughout the meal, her responses clipped, her laughter forced. "Work's been brutal," she said, dodging his attempts to probe deeper. The unease settled in Andrew's chest, a quiet suspicion he couldn't dismiss. He wanted to trust her, to believe the woman he'd married was still the same, but the cracks in their once-perfect life were growing too wide to ignore. Their social circle noticed the shift as well. At a recent neighborhood barbecue, a friend commented that Emily seemed preoccupied, a far cry from her usual effervescent self. "She's probably just swamped," Andrew replied, forcing a smile, but the observation lingered. He began to notice small changes, new perfume, sharper and sweeter than her usual scent, outfits chosen with extra care for client meetings that stretched late into the evening. He tried to convince himself it was nothing, that his imagination was running wild. But deep down, a nagging voice insisted something was amiss, and it grew louder with each passing day. One night, as Emily slept, Andrew sat in their living room, the soft glow of a lamp casting long shadows across the space. His eyes fell on a framed photo from their wedding day. Emily's radiant grin, his arm wrapped protectively around her, both of them certain of their shared future. That certainty now felt like a distant echo. He couldn't pinpoint when the shift had begun, but the love that once flowed effortlessly was slipping away, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty. Had he missed something? Was he too caught up in his work, too predictable for her vibrant spirit? The questions churned, unanswered, but one truth was undeniable. He couldn't keep living in this haze of doubt. In that quiet moment, Andrew made a decision. If there was a secret behind Emily's guarded glances, he would uncover it. He didn't know what he'd find or how he'd face it, but the ambiguity was suffocating. He needed clarity, no matter the cost. As he slipped into bed beside her, Emily stirred, murmuring softly in her sleep. Andrew watched her for a moment, his heart heavy with a mix of love, fear, and determination. Whatever lay ahead, he knew their lives were on the cusp of a profound change, and he was ready to face it with the same precision he brought to his work. The weight of suspicion pressed harder on Andrew Carter each day, a quiet storm brewing in his chest. At his Chicago law firm, he sifted through case files with his usual diligence, but his focus wavered, his thoughts consumed by Emily. Her late nights, her guarded glances at her phone, the way she deflected his questions with a practiced smile. It all pointed to a truth he wasn't ready to face. He clung to the hope that their love could still be salvaged, but the doubts were relentless, eroding his peace like a slow drip. The first tangible clue surfaced unexpectedly. While organizing their home office in Evanston, Andrew stumbled across a folded receipt buried among Emily's scattered papers. It was from the Violet Hour, an upscale Chicago cocktail bar, dated for a Tuesday night when Emily had claimed she was stuck at a client meeting. The bill listed 2 martinis, a shared dessert, and a hefty tip, details that painted an intimate evening, not a business one. Andrew's stomach churned as he stared at the paper. The Violet Hour was a place for whispered conversations and lingering glances, not property deals. He tucked the receipt away, telling himself there was a logical explanation, but the seed of doubt took root, its tendrils wrapping around his heart. That evening, Emily swept through the front door, her hair slightly mussed, her smile a touch too bright. "Long day?" Andrew asked, keeping his voice even as he studied her. "Just the usual chaos," she replied, her eyes flicking to her phone before meeting his. She launched into a vague story about a demanding client, but her words felt hollow, like a script recited one too many times. Andrew nodded, his mind replaying the receipt's details. He wanted to confront her, to demand the truth, but he held back. If she was hiding something, he needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't dismiss with her effortless charm. The signs multiplied in the days that followed. Emily's phone buzzed at odd hours, late at night, early in the morning, and she'd silence it with a quick swipe, her fingers moving too fast for Andrew to glimpse the screen. One morning, while she was in the shower, a notification flashed. "Missed you today." The words hit like a punch, but Andrew resisted the urge to unlock her phone. Instead, he began cataloging the small discrepancies. A new pair of earrings she hadn't mentioned, a faint trace of unfamiliar cologne on her coat, the way she'd linger in the mirror before work events. Each discovery was a shard of glass, cutting deeper into his trust. Andrew tried to address the growing distance one night over dinner, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You've been so busy, Em. Everything okay?" he asked, watching her closely. Emily's fork hesitated, her eyes flickering with something. Guilt? Defiance? "It's just work," she said, her tone clipped. "You know how it is, clients never sleep." She softened, reaching for his hand across the table. "I'm sorry if I've been distracted. Let's do something fun soon, just us." Her touch was warm, her words convincing, but they rang false, like a melody slightly off-key. Andrew forced a smile, but the receipt burned in his memory, its implications impossible to ignore. A few days later, a co-worker's offhand remark at the firm sent a jolt through him. "Saw Emily at that new bistro in the Loop," the colleague said casually. "She was with some guy, looked like a big-shot client." Andrew's pulse quickened. Emily hadn't mentioned any bistro, and the timing clashed with her supposed schedule. He thanked his co-worker, his mind racing as he pieced together the fragments. That night, he logged into their joint bank account, something he rarely did. A series of small charges caught his eye: dinners at trendy restaurants, drinks at hotel bars, a purchase at a boutique. The amounts were modest but consistent, sketching a pattern that made his heart sink. The tipping point came on a crisp Saturday morning. Emily announced she was meeting a friend for brunch, her tone overly casual, her outfit, a sleek blazer and heels, chosen with too much care. Andrew hadn't planned to act, but the need for answers overwhelmed him. He drove to the bistro she'd mentioned, parking a block away. Through the restaurant's window, he saw her, radiant and laughing, her hand resting on the arm of a man in a sharp suit. The man leaned in, his smile intimate, and Emily didn't pull away. Andrew's breath caught, his hands trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. The truth was stark, undeniable, a blade slicing through the last threads of his hope. Back home, Andrew sat in their quiet living room, the image of Emily's laughter seared into his mind. He felt foolish, betrayed, but also strangely resolute. The love he'd held onto was unraveling, and with it, his willingness to stay in the dark. When Emily returned, humming about her lovely brunch, he played along, his voice calm, his face a mask. But inside, a shift had occurred. He wasn't just a heartbroken husband anymore. He was a man determined to uncover the full scope of Emily's deception and ensure she faced the consequences, not with reckless anger, but with the calculated precision he brought to his work. Andrew Carter's world had shifted, the sting of Emily's betrayal sharpening his senses. The image of her laughing with another man at the bistro lingered, a wound that fueled his resolve. He no longer saw their Evanston home as a haven, but as a stage for her deception. At a Chicago law firm, he buried himself in work, but every quiet moment brought back the truth he'd witnessed. He wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. He needed to understand the full scope of her lies, to build a case as airtight as the legal briefs he crafted. The clues kept coming, each one a thread in the unraveling tapestry of their marriage. Andrew started checking their joint bank account more closely, something he'd rarely done before. The transactions told a story. Dinners at upscale restaurants, drinks at boutique bars, a purchase at a high-end clothing store, all small enough to go unnoticed, but frequent enough to form a pattern. One charge stood out, a $200 dinner at a rooftop lounge on a night Emily had claimed she was working late. The realization hit hard. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was funding her secret life with their shared money. A coworker's comment at the firm added another piece to the puzzle. Saw Emily at a gallery opening last week. The colleague said casually over coffee. She was with some slick guy. Thought he was a client. Andrew's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone neutral. Probably was, he replied, though his mind raced. Emily hadn't mentioned a gallery, and her schedule that night had been blank. He thanked his coworker and later cross-checked the date with their bank records, finding a charge for a nearby wine bar. The evidence was mounting, each discovery a step closer to the truth. Andrew's next move was cautious but deliberate. He began cataloging Emily's habits, her client meetings, her sudden errands, the times she'd slip away to take calls. One evening, while she was out, he sifted through her desk, careful not to disturb her papers. Tucked in a folder labeled Work, he found a handwritten note. Meet C at 7, Palmer House. The Palmer House was a historic Chicago hotel, its bar a hotspot for discreet rendezvous. The note was dated for the following week, and Andrew's pulse quickened. He didn't know who C was, but he intended to find out. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Emily announced she was attending a networking event at a downtown restaurant. Her tone breezy, her outfit, a tailored dress and heels, too polished for a casual work function. Andrew nodded, playing the part of the supportive husband, but his mind was elsewhere. After she left, he drove to the restaurant, parking a block away. Through the window, he saw her at a corner table, her laughter bright, her hand resting briefly on the arm of a man in a sharp blazer. The man, presumably C, was polished, confident, his gestures intimate. Andrew's chest tightened, but he stayed calm, snapping a discreet photo from his car. This wasn't about catching her in the act. It was about building a case. Back home, Andrew dug deeper. Using skills honed at the law firm, he accessed public records and cross-referenced the man's face with real estate listings Emily had handled. The man was Chris Dalton, a wealthy client with a string of downtown properties. A quick search revealed emails between Emily and Chris, buried in a work account she hadn't logged out of on their shared laptop. The messages were professional on the surface, but laced with flirtation, winks, vague plans to catch up soon. One email mentioned a special deal on a property, with Chris promising extra benefits if it closed quickly. Andrew's blood ran cold. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was entangled in something unethical, possibly illegal. The revelation shifted Andrew's perspective. This wasn't just personal betrayal. It was a breach of trust that extended beyond their marriage. He felt foolish for trusting her so blindly, but the pain gave way to clarity. He wouldn't lash out or confront her impulsively. Instead, he'd approach this like a case at work, methodically, strategically. He saved screenshots of emails, documented the bank charges, and noted every discrepancy in her stories. Each piece of evidence strengthened his resolve, not to destroy Emily, but to ensure she faced the consequences of her choices. By week's end, Andrew sat in their quiet living room, a wedding photo on the mantel catching his eye. The man in that picture, hopeful, trusting, felt like a stranger. Emily's lies had shattered that version of him, but they'd also awakened something new, a determination to reclaim his dignity. He wasn't sure how he'd proceed, but one thing was certain. He'd protect himself, not with vengeance, but with the truth. As Emily's key turned in the lock that night, Andrew steeled himself. The game had changed, and he was ready to play it smarter than she ever could. Andrew Carter sat at his desk in the Evanston home office, the glow of his laptop casting sharp shadows across the room. The evidence of Emily's betrayal, bank statements, emails, a photo from the restaurant, lay organized in digital folders, each file a testament to his meticulous resolve. The pain of her deception still burned, but it had transformed into something else, a clear, focused determination to reclaim his dignity. He wasn't driven by revenge, but by a need for justice, a way to protect himself from the life Emily had tried to unravel. His next steps would be calculated, lawful, and precise, just like the legal cases he handled at a Chicago firm. The weight of what he'd uncovered pressed heavily. Emily's affair with Chris Dalton, a wealthy real estate client, wasn't just personal. It was tangled in an unethical deal. The emails Andrew had found hinted at a scheme where Emily promised Chris a cut of a property sale in exchange for personal favors. The deal skirted professional standards, and if exposed, it could cost Emily her license. Andrew saved every message, cross-referencing them with public records to confirm the property status. His paralegal skills shown here, turning raw data into a case that could withstand scrutiny. But the work was draining. Each discovery a reminder of how deeply he'd been betrayed. Doubt crept in during quieter moments. Had he been blind to Emily's unhappiness? Was he too predictable, too absorbed in his routines to notice her drifting? These questions haunted him, threatening to erode his resolve. To counter them, Andrew sought help. He started seeing a therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Laura, who met him weekly in a cozy office near the firm. "You're not to blame for her choices," Laura said, her voice steady. "But you can choose how to move forward." Those words became a lifeline, helping Andrew see that his worth wasn't tied to Emily's actions. He wasn't a victim. He was a man capable of taking control. His friend Michael, an attorney at the firm, became another anchor. Over coffee in a quiet Loop cafe, Andrew shared the broad strokes of Emily's betrayal, careful to keep the details vague. Michael listened, his brow furrowed, then leaned forward. "You're doing the right thing by staying calm," he said. "If you want to fight this, do it smart, legally, cleanly. I can help." Michael's offer was a turning point. Together, they began mapping out a plan. Divorce papers to secure Andrew's assets, and an anonymous tip to the real estate board about Emily's unethical deal. Every move would be above board, ensuring Emily couldn't twist the narrative. Andrew faced a moral crossroads one evening, staring at the wedding photo on their mantel. Part of him wanted to confront Emily, to lay out her lies and watch her squirm. Another part considered a darker path, exposing her affair to her colleagues, humiliating her publicly. But as he traced the frame's edge, he remembered Laura's words, justice, not vengeance. He chose a different approach, one that would hold Emily accountable without sinking to her level. He'd let the truth speak for itself, delivered through legal channels and professional consequences. The plan took shape with precision. Andrew worked with Michael to draft divorce papers, ensuring his claim to their home and savings was ironclad, backed by evidence of Emily's misuse of their joint account. He also prepared a detailed report for the real estate board, outlining Emily's deal with Chris without mentioning the affair. The report was anonymous, professional, and damning, citing public records and email excerpts. To maximize impact, Andrew decided to deliver the divorce papers at a moment when Emily would feel the weight of her choices, not in public, to avoid YouTube scrutiny, but in a private setting where Chris's presence would amplify the truth. One night, as Emily returned from another client meeting, Andrew tested his resolve. She breezed in, humming, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar. "Good day," he asked, his voice calm despite the storm inside. "Great, actually," she replied, her smile too bright. "Close the deal." He nodded, knowing the deal was likely with Chris. The lie stung, but it also fueled his clarity. He was no longer the trusting husband she could manipulate. He was a man with a purpose, and that purpose was to ensure Emily faced the consequences of her actions, not through anger, but through the unyielding power of the truth. As Andrew finalized his preparations, he felt a shift within. The man who'd once defined himself by his marriage was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more self-assured. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. He'd face it on his terms, with the dignity Emily had tried to strip away. The next steps would test him, but he was ready, armed with evidence, support, and a quiet conviction that justice would prevail. Andrew Carter stood in the quiet of his Evanston home, the weight of his decision settling over him like a calm after a storm. The divorce papers were ready, the evidence of Emily's betrayal and unethical dealings meticulously compiled. His plan, crafted with the precision of his paralegal work, was set to unfold. With the help of his friend Michael, an attorney, and the grounding words of his therapist, Laura, Andrew had chosen a path of justice over vengeance. He wasn't out to destroy Emily, but to ensure she faced the consequences of her choices, legally, fairly, and without the public spectacle that might draw YouTube's ire. The truth would be enough. The moment of reckoning came on a crisp Chicago evening. Andrew arranged for the divorce papers to be delivered to Emily at her office, a sleek downtown real estate firm where she often met clients. He knew Chris Dalton, her lover and accomplice in the shady property deal, would be there for a scheduled meeting. The timing was deliberate, not to humiliate, but to let the truth unfold in a setting where Emily's professional facade would crack. Andrew stayed away, trusting the process he'd set in motion. He didn't need to witness her reaction to know the impact. At the office, a courier approached Emily as she sat with Chris, discussing their latest deal. The envelope, plain and unassuming, landed on the table. "Emily Carter?" the courier asked. She nodded, her smile faltering as she opened it. The documents inside laid out Andrew's claim to their home and savings, backed by evidence of her misuse of their joint account. A separate letter detailed the divorce proceedings, citing her infidelity and financial misconduct. Emily's face drained of color, her eyes scanning the pages as Chris leaned over, confused. "What's this?" he asked, his voice sharp. She didn't answer, her hands trembling as the reality sank in. The truth was out, and there was no charming her way free. Days later, the real estate board acted on Andrew's anonymous tip. They launched an investigation into Emily's deal with Chris, citing violations of professional ethics. The evidence, public records, emails, and transaction logs, was damning. Within a week, Emily's license was suspended, her reputation in Chicago's tight-knit real estate circle tarnished. Chris, realizing he'd been implicated in her scheme, cut contact, unwilling to risk his own standing. Emily was left alone, her carefully constructed world crumbling under the weight of her own actions. Andrew, meanwhile, moved forward with quiet determination. The divorce proceedings progressed smoothly, with Michael ensuring every detail was handled lawfully. Andrew retained the Evanston home, a bittersweet victory, but chose to sell it, unwilling to live among memories of betrayal. He found a new apartment in Chicago's vibrant Loop, a fresh start in a neighborhood buzzing with life. The move was more than physical. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where he defined himself not by his marriage, but by his resilience. The emotional toll lingered, but Andrew leaned on Laura's guidance to process it. In their sessions, he explored the pain of Emily's betrayal, but also his own growth. "You've reclaimed your power," Laura said, and Andrew felt the truth of it. He wasn't the man who'd once doubted his worth, wondering if he'd failed Emily. He was someone who'd faced betrayal head-on, choosing dignity over despair. His conversations with Michael, often over late-night coffees, reinforced this. "You did it right," Michael said. "No drama, just justice." Those words became a mantra, a reminder that Andrew's strength lay in his restraint. In the weeks that followed, Andrew took an unexpected step. Inspired by his journey, he started a blog, sharing his story of overcoming betrayal without naming Emily. He wrote about the pain, the choices, and the power of moving forward. The response was overwhelming. Readers shared their own stories, thanking him for showing that healing was possible. One message stood out: a woman who'd left a toxic relationship after reading his posts. "You gave me courage," she wrote. Andrew read those words and felt a warmth he hadn't known in months. His victory wasn't just personal, it was a beacon for others. Emily, meanwhile, faced the fallout alone. Stripped of her license and reputation, she moved to a modest apartment on the city's outskirts, far from the glittering world she'd once commanded. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to align with someone whose actions had been so exposed. She tried reaching out to Andrew once, leaving a voicemail filled with apologies, but he didn't respond. Her words couldn't undo the damage, and he had no obligation to absolve her. Instead, he focused on his future, free from the lies that had once bound him. As Andrew settled into his new life, he stood in his Loop apartment, the city's skyline stretching before him. The pain of Emily's betrayal hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined him. He'd learned that justice wasn't about punishment, but about restoring his own worth. The blog, the new home, the support of friends like Michael, all were proof of his strength. He didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in months, he felt ready to face it, grounded in the truth that he was enough.